Assalamu alaikum, everybody. So, inshallah, we're going to continue, but today I really feel like challenging everybody. I don't know why. Yeah, maybe it's the shaitan, is right. All right. Let's do it. وإن خفتم شقاق بينهما فبعثوا حكم أهله وحكم أهلها إن يريد إصلاحا يوفق الله بينهما إن الله كان عليما خبيرا. So the question is really quick. And if you fear, the word is shiqaq, which means a separation, but we're not talking about separation per se. Shiqaq can mean a separation and could also mean a dispute. Okay. So in other words, if you were to literally look at the word, it would mean to tear. Shiqaq would mean to tear. But this is not talking about tearing anything other than a metaphorical tear, which is the tear within the relationship. Okay. The tear within the relationship, why use the word tear? Because anyways, the Quran describes the marital relationship as a garment. So if the Quran describes the marital relationship as a garment, so that's why that word was used. It's like you're tearing the garment, which is that marriage, because anyways, she was a garment to him, he was a garment to her. They were one, covering each other's shortcomings. They were fitting each other right. They were giving warmth to one another. They were the closest to one another. All right. And then all of a sudden, you could see that there's this tear that started coming in. And it's really sad. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had mentioned, وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. And when he talked about not forgetting the good that you had both contributed to one another. In other words, at one time you were the dearest to one another. How is it that all of a sudden each and every single one of you is really just trying to expose the other? And this is really common. If you want to know somebody's taqwa, this is when you would see them. This is when you would see them. When they're in dispute with somebody, the munafiq, the Prophet ﷺ says, إِذَا خَاصَمَ فَجَرَ. A munafiq, whenever they are at dispute or in any tension with anybody, fajar. What does that mean? Fajar means that they all of a sudden lose every single principle in order to retaliate. They will lose every single principle. They will make up lies. They will know no law. They will know no border. They will know no principle. They will know no relationship. They will know no past relationship. They will know no blood relations. They will know no, not illan and not them. Anger is different, because with anger, there is, fair enough. With anger, the Prophet ﷺ did actually tell us that his will, لا تغضب. The will was لا تغضب. But wait a minute, how is it that the Prophet ﷺ was telling us لا تغضب, yet Sayyida Aysha said, or the Sahaba would describe him, that he would be in extreme anger. He would be in extreme, don't take pictures. He would be in extreme anger that to the point that his face would get red. Well, that was إِلَّا أَن تُنْتَهَكَ حُرُمَاتِ اللَّهِ. That would only be when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's boundaries, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's borders were transgressed. That's when he would be angry. So it wasn't for a personal thing. It wasn't to defend a personal thing. It was really for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other thing is that even when you are angry, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you certain ways to get your right. But it doesn't mean because you're angry at somebody, or because probably that you're angry at your ex to be or whatever it is, that you basically would consider that there's not a single rule that you would abide by. So then it's making up lies. Now it's trying to take away their money. Now, yeah, I'm going to take away half of his income. And now I'm going to start saying that he was abusing the kids. And I've had many cases where the women would say, yeah, I'm going to try to do different things in order to make sure that he would never see his kids again. And it was really over the husband watching over his kids' portion control. When so I think it was that particular child was 8 years old and 150 pounds. 8 years old and 150 pounds. That's that's way beyond his weight for an 8-year-old. So the father was trying to portion control. And then the mother, who was trying to retaliate from the father, basically sued the father and said that he was too abusive to the child. It's like, what? Too abusive to tell the child that he has to do portion control to make sure that he doesn't go into, the different children's diabetes and different types of diabetes and different heart problems and different liver problems. Are you serious? They will use whatever. This is a munafiq, not because you are angry at your ex or you were in some dispute. It doesn't mean that you would regard each and every single border a right for you to attack. That's why the Prophet ﷺ actually described that al-munafiq إذا خاصم فجر. For al-munafiq, whenever they're dispute with somebody, they will not regard any border. They will forget. They will abuse every single principle. They will dismiss everything just to retaliate. Now that's where, of course, in disputes like that, it can happen that when we look at disputes, it can happen that some disputes you could say this is really clear, she's been abused or he's been abused and so forth. You could look at some cases where it's very obvious, but other cases are not necessarily that obvious. She's a woman of taqwa and he's a man of taqwa, but then things are not working out. It can happen. And that's why I would say it's really important not to judge different problems that would come to you or even that you would hear of from far. What you hear of from far is completely different than when you would have him and her standing right in front of you and you're hearing both sides. You can hear one side, she can tell you all the information from her own narrative. And it isn't until they would sit face to face in front of each other and you would discover that the narrative was not at all, the story was not at all centered upon that narrative. She's talking about a completely different thing, and he's talking about a completely different thing. He was considering certain priorities, and she was considering certain priorities. And then, of course, you would see once they're sitting face to face here, you would discover that the dispute is not always black and white. And that's where, when the dispute is not necessarily black and white, that's where فَبَعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا. That's when we would basically appoint or choose, or I guess find somebody that both parties are basically comfortable with, are happy with, in taking the lead in making a reconciliation or a final dispute, or end the dispute, or probably ending or finding a certain way of making a peaceful and a safe reconciliation, or at least a safe and a peaceful resolution. Okay. Now that's where that hakam comes in, because al-hakam, we said last time that it can mean one judge, an appointed, designated judge that is assigned by the government. It could also mean that it is an appointed person by the person himself. Now, here's one thing. does that person really become nothing but a power of attorney to say and be vocal about who they're trying to defend? No, because here, this is not a power of attorney. This is not al-wakala. This is not a power of attorney, but this is actually a judge. In other words, a person that would pretty much speak on their behalf, or at least figure out the best way to solve this problem rather than it extending to the rest of the family. Because it can happen. The problem is between two, and then the mother-in-law got involved, the father-in-law got involved, and then all of a sudden the sisters got involved, and everybody got involved, and then all of a sudden the whole tribe is involved, and it was really just these two people.
The tribe needs to be punished.
The tribe needs to be punished. That's it.
They can get involved in small things. It's not their place.
That's not their place. Okay, that's where
using Islamic resources.
So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us right there the way to solve these kind of problems is that you would have someone. Here's one thing. It doesn't have to be two people. It can be one person that can decide and bring about a finalization, whether to make a resolution or whether to make a reconciliation. So if they choose, who's they? Well, yurida is referring to the hakam, to those that were appointed in order to bring a resolution or a reconciliation. If they choose islaha, al-islah is a reconciliation, the Lord Almighty would bring in yuwaffiq. What is it, tawfiq? Now, this is a very important word because يوفق الله بينهما. التوفيق means to bring in a success. To bring in a success. So does that mean that divorce, if reconciliation is a type of success, does that mean a resolution is a type of failure? Let me ask the question differently. Is divorce hated?
Yes.
Evidence. أبغض الحلال عند الله الطلاق. This hadith is not authentic. I know, exactly. What is أبغض الحلال? أبغض الحلال means the worst and the most hated halal or permissible thing that anyone can do is divorce. This hadith is not authentic. Okay? So what does that mean? Does that mean that we should consider divorce as it's loved? No, let's not fall in this dichotomy. It doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes divorce, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did in fact consider that al-islah is definitely superior to making a resolution to a divorce. Now, so what are the different things that shows, what are the different things that show that divorce is hated?
Well, it's good the family structure and then the society kind of get affected.
I want you to give me from this ayah. شقاق. شقاق. Of course. It's a tear. شقاق right there.
So then the shiqaq is just not them. It's like more than
this shiqaq is, it's
a
a tear. It's a tear. So this is a body that you are tearing. This is a body that you are simply right there creating some tension, and this is bringing in this separation. So what you're trying to do is trying to do a, reconciliation by making a fusion again. How do you do the fusion? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, well, if they choose, in other words, this is important. Of course, this is talking about the hakam, or is it not? Is this talking about ahlihi and ahliha, the pronoun ha, her, and his family? Or is this really talking about the hakam? At the end of the day, differences of opinions between scholars on whether it's referring to the husband and the wife or whether it's referring to the two deputies. Let's call them deputies.
What's the predominant?
I mean, when you when you want to read it, what's the preponderant?
Yeah.
If you actually, it's really interesting because if you were to look at it, يريد إصلاحا يوفق له بينهما. Can we actually say يريد إصلاحا for the husband and wife if they really were serious about wanting a reconciliation? Then the Lord Almighty would bring about a success in this, at least this attempt. Is this possible? This is possible. So how did we get there? Well, because in Lugha Arabiya, this muthanna, or this right there, this muthanna, in Lugha Arabiya, the general and default rule is when you have a pronoun, okay? When you have a pronoun and that is connected to a verb, the pronoun is supposed to be really referring to the nearest mentioned noun. Or sometimes the context itself can actually take the meaning from the nearest mentioned pronoun, or for the referring to the nearest mentioned noun to the farthest mentioned noun. Sometimes the context. Let's give an example. Ever heard of al-Burda?
No.
Never heard of al-Burda?
Buddha what?
Burda, the song, the poem.
Yeah.
You heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, how many people heard of it?
Probably knows, but she doesn't know it's called Buddha.
The Burda, it's
How
about
does it-
praising the Prophet
That's what I
ﷺ
was,
and all of that.
How does it go?
It's a long one. It's a long one. So here, let me explain the Burda for just a little bit.
Yeah.
Hold on. Just a little bit, okay? We're not going to take long in that. What page is that? Hold on. That's 93. I'm just going to show you. Just remember, this is page 93. We're going to go to Surah Al-Fatih really quick. Okay? I'm going to go to Surah Al-Fatih really quick. I hope I can find it really, really fast. But in Surah Al-Fatih, you could see that, there's this ayah that if it is not understood right, it could really be completely off. And that's why when you start reading the pronouns and the different rules that relate to nouns and pronouns, it's really important to understand these little things because it will help you. It will help you understand a lot of the different disputes that, for example, about al-burda. So al-burda, here we go. Look at this. Look at this ayah right there. لِتُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وتعزروه وتوقروه وتسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا. Now, I want you to look at this one because this is extremely correlated with what we were doing, at least in terms of the whole thing about pronoun. So when we say a pronoun, قلمه, قلمه, his قلم, كتابها, her قلم, قلمها, her قلم, كتابهما, their قلم for two people, قلمهم, their قلم for three people. Well, one thing we had said earlier, يريد إصلاح يوفق الله بينهما. We said, well, is this referring that if they, the two people, want a reconciliation, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them success. So is the success going to be for the people that were deputies on their behalf? Or is this referring yurida to mean the hakam themselves? Can we even have within the same sentence two different pronouns referring to two different nouns when the general rule is that when you have a pronoun, it's going to actually refer to the nearest noun? How many people are lost? Okay, so let's look at this ayah. لِتُؤْمِنُوا, to believe in Allah, إِنَّا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ شَاهِدًا وَمُبَشِّرًا وَنَذِيرًا. We had sent you as a witness, as bring glad tidings, and as a warner. Okay, لِتُؤْمِنُوا, as for in order for you to believe in Allah and His Messenger. I'm going to read this wrong, but I'm going to read it as to how the ayah is wording it to somebody that is just reading it off like that. Okay, so that you would believe in Allah and His Messenger and give Him support, respect, and worship Him throughout the night and throughout the day. Wait a minute. Are we doing tasbih for Allah or the Prophet?
Allah.
Huh?
Allah.
So are we here talking about tu'aziru, give them support? Is it Allah? And respect and honor, is that for Allah or the Prophet? Huh? This is for the Prophet. You see, you guys see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, this part, the who, this pronoun ha was referring to the Prophet right there. So tu'aziru means to give respect, support, and to waqiru, to bring an honor to the Prophet, and to sabbihu, to give tasbih for Allah, not the Prophet. You don't do tasbih for the Prophet. Are you with me here? Who's now getting this figured out?
But there's a what?
What? There's a what? Well, there's a what right there. There's a what right there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, this is extremely important because, and for this same reason, many, actually, I'm not saying Busairi is in the Burda is whatsoever, infallible. He might have made mistakes. This is not at all, but I would say it is definitely exaggerated to make it a shirky poem and just say, well, he's actually considering it as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, this is what I'm saying, is that what caused the confusion for many is that the pronouns in Lugha Arabiya can sometimes, you look at one, the nearest noun that is mentioned, and sometimes you also refer to the context. So we're not going to make tasbih for the Prophet. You don't tasbih for the Prophet. Tasbih is only for Allah. Is only for Allah, not the Prophet. We don't glorify the Prophet like he's a God. We glorify Allah like he's a God. But we do give respect, honor to the Prophet, but not treat him as a level to God. Now, that's the same thing. When you look at al-Burda, you will have some opposing it like this is the shirk of our life. And they will stand against it and they'll be like, oh my God, this man, this shaykh actually made a sharh for al-Burda. It's shirk. And they will really spend days and days just trying to prove that that's nothing but a shirky poem.
What does the Burda do?
Well, I mean, the Burda, if you took out the main general rule that in Lugha Arabiya, the context can also be a place to explain the pronoun, that would answer and take away a lot of the misunderstanding / confusion that many would misunderstand in the poem. They would think that this is actually putting the Prophet ﷺ to the level of God himself. Now, the reason why I'm actually referring to this one is that you could see that although to sabbihu, we should have considered with the default rule that we had said that it should go, the pronoun ha should be to the nearest mentioned noun. We would say, well, this actually means we're going to praise and glory and pray to the Prophet and glorify him like God. No Muslim would say such a thing. No Muslim would say such a thing. No Muslim would say that we worship Muhammad like we worship God. Because that's shirk on the spot. That's shirk on the spot. Worshipping the Prophet like you're worshiping God. That's shirk on the spot. The Prophet himself said, Don't overpraise me like like the Christians had overpraised Prophet Isa alayhi salam. Well, that's the same thing. Now, and therefore, the nearest noun is not always to be the nearest to what the pronoun is necessarily referring to. Sometimes the context could also be, and therefore, let's go to page 93, the page that we were on earlier. Therefore, when you look at this ayah right here, when you see this ayah right here, حَكَمْ مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمْ مِنْ أَهْلِهَا, yes, it's talking about the deputies that were supposed to be getting involved in order to create a resolution that, yes, I can have this be this right pronoun here referring to both the husband and the wife. It could also be referring to them too. What is the most important thing is that one, whenever there is a dispute, you could see that sometimes some disputes can really be ambiguous and it might not always be an easy thing. Sometimes can be a woman of deen and he can be a man of deen, but then they're just not figuring themselves out. Number two, from this ayah, you could see that if they want to do a reconciliation, what is that? There is no way where any marriage is successful on its own. Successful marriages are made by you, by your contribution, by your compromise, by you taking all the effort to dismiss a lot of things. You know, here's a very common thing that happens when a husband and a wife are in dispute and they're fighting over each and every single detail. There's no way that you can comment and talk about each and every single detail. And most of the times, they're not necessarily fighting over the details of, hey, who bought the car and whatever it is. Most of the times, they're actually fighting over power, respect. Those are the most two things. And recognition. Power, respect, and recognition. They're fighting over power, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy. Respect, the Prophet ﷺ made it easy. In terms of respect, made it really easy. For men, خيركم خيركم لنسائه. The best of you is the best one to his own family. That's the best. And same thing. The best. Oh, when you look at Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describe the woman as? Al-faya sayyidaha lada al-bab. Al-faya. So he was basically running. He was basically running away from this lady. This lady was definitely trying to seduce him, but he opens the door and she snatches him from the back. But then the ayah said, and they found her master. The word is master, Sayyidah. But certainly, it wasn't talking about a master, a master. She was a queen. So, why didn't it say Al-Fayah, the king at the door? Sayyidah, to actually say, well, there's a certain place of responsibility. There's a certain place, but even that place should not mean at all that he would abuse his authority, abuse his power, abuse his position, or abuse even her vulnerability. That's why the Prophet ﷺ actually tells the man right at his deathbed, as-salat as-salam wa malakat aymanukum. Salah and milk al-yamin are basically the concubines. Be careful and take care of these people. Don't abuse their vulnerability. Same thing, of course, even at the farewell Hajj. It was talking about وَاسْتَحْلَلْتُمْ فُرُوجَهُنَّ بِكَلِمَةِ اللَّهِ. You had regarded their private parts as halal by the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A special surah just for women in order to change the whole situation that women were abused in. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was definitely telling men all of that, but at the same time, it's important to consider and remember that respecting the husband is actually part of Islam. And certainly, culture plays a very important role. What does it mean to respect the husband? If Islam tells you can't even fast the sunnah without the husband's permission, what does that mean? Well, that means عظم حقه عليها. There's a huge honor that must be, yes, certainly between the husband and the wife. But when you look at that, it's يريد إصلاحا, when they both want to reconciliate, when they want to, if they really have the intention to fix all of this, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them success. In other words, real change really starts with what is your intention? What is your intention? What is the initiative? How do you want to do this? How do you want to compromise? And most of the times, when husband and wife would come in, sorry, ladies, this is not at all to be a misogynist, but this is a common mistake that a lot of women do. You know what they do? She'll come in and she'll spend hours and hours, and all of a sudden, she thinks that she has to right now spill the beans and say and fix each and every single thing. Spill the beans. Every little thing that she hated about him, she'll right now talk about it one after another, and she'll keep on repeating and repeating and repeating, and it becomes just a time where each and every single one is just there to just expose the other. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ, don't forget al-fadl. What is al-fadl? Al-fadl doesn't mean the good, by the way. Al-fadl really means the excess good that you might do. Al-fadl can also mean something that you would do good and don't expect something in return. So what does that mean? Well, that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that the relationship between the husband and wife, it shouldn't be on the basis of, I had done this, now you have to do this. I did this, now you have to do this. The second that we're looking at each other where I had done this, therefore you have to do this. I talked to your family, now you're going to have to talk to my family. I had went to your family, now you have to go to theirs. I had helped you pick up the kids, now you have to do this the second day. Or the second that we are living based on some form of, I've done this, now you have to do this, it's never going to end, because it's not based on al-fadl. It's based on trying to do tahqiq al-adl. The second that you live your marriage, that we're trying to get to a level of equity and a level of justice, that's when it feels what? Justice, that's when it feels, yes. There's something better than justice? What are you talking about? Yes, there is something better than justice. That's al-fadl. Justice is impossible to get to in marriage. Ladies, listen to this. This is real. I know everybody's like, what are you saying here? Justice is too utopian to get to. Too utopian to get to in marriage. What does that mean? That means, sister, Brother, don't keep on looking for each other's shortcomings to try to prove that they didn't do enough. You contribute. You contribute. And inshallah, that will push them to contribute. Unless the person is evil, wallahi, ولاد الحرام لا ينفع معهم شيء. Ibn al-Haram, the son of a haram person, أقسم بالله العظيم, no matter how much you contribute, no matter how much you give them, أقسم بالله العظيم, Ibn al-Haram deserves nowhere but hell. أقسم بالله العظيم, that's where they belong. That's where they belong, in hell.
Those who complain.
But it is part of our human instinct. And you know what? Even the animals, when people contribute good in them, their response is going to actually feel that they need to embrace you. This is part of humanhood. It's part of even animals, even dogs. You pet them, you give them water, you give them food, they will feel compelled to be there for you. They will feel compelled. And listen to this. You want to establish this, you want to really let people feel compelled, contribute for them. Simple. Contribute for them. Share. Help them. They will feel, it is part of our own instinct, that I will feel that I have to pay back.
They'll do double.
They'll do double. Contribute in good. And there's no better contribution than in your own marriage. But the second that you're trying to, oh, you did this much, I did that much, you did this much, that's it. That's going down the failure. The second that you're trying to get to that justice level in marriage, that same second, you had put an RIP. Wallahi al-azim.
You're right.
Or should I say RIF, rest in fights. Uqsim billah. Because the second that it's going to be rest and fights. I did this much, you did this much. No, I put the laundry. Now it's for your turn to take it out. Oh, I folded it. Now it's time for you to put it in the closet. Oh, I cooked the food. Now it's time for you to wash the dishes. This is going to be an endless thing. Because when we do any contribution, the second that you do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's when you will realize that the contribution you're doing, you're not waiting for people to recognize it. You're waiting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to recognize it. That's what you're waiting for. You're not waiting for people. Wallahi, the amount that a woman does at home, no man and no child, and I will say it again and again, is going to be able to count it for you. You know why? Because even the Prophet ﷺ, for the women, and when that Sahabiya, she came and, hey, the men get to go for jihad, the men get to go for Salat al-Jumu'ah, the men get to go, started counting. And he told her, eat just by obeying your husband and taking care of your family, doing siyam, doing salah, it would be equal and it would be equivalent to all that what men are doing. Why? Because it is a jihad. It's putting her life at risk. She's staying up all night, sleepless days. It's exactly like counting for the sleepless hours that a mujahid would do. Or sitting would be a lot easier to sit, listen to a khutbah than actually listen to a child bragging. Or a child getting on your nerves or going through a tantrum. Take a man, listen to the child go into a tantrum. What's the first thing that he's going to do?
Give him away.
Give him away. Maybe give him a slap. Shut up. Silence him. But for the woman, she's got the silence. She's got the patience. So what do you want? What happened? Can you ask nicely? Can you do this? And she's trying to actually discipline the child when she's really at the peak of her anger. If you don't want to call that jihad, girl, I don't know what is called jihad. This is real. At the peak of her anger, she's like, okay, I want you to say it nicely. Now stand upright. Can you share with your brother? Can you share with her? Imagine the husband actually doing that. Barely. I mean, but does the husband do that?
No.
No.
He calls mommy.
He calls mommy. Exactly. You figure it out. Right? That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put you right there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where the Prophet actually tells you that this is equivalent to all that you had, to all the Jum'ah, to all the leadership, to all that he does in public. That's all I need. That's all I need. There's no way that any man, that's why the Prophet actually said when the man came to the Prophet said, Man ahaqqu nasi bihusni suhbati? Who's the most one that deserves my companionship the most? And he said, your mother. Then who? Your mother. Then who? Your mother. Then who? Your father. Why is he their mother 3 times? Because he's telling you, no matter how long I would spend trying to count all the amount of contribution that your mom had given you at home, it wouldn't be enough. So ladies, don't wait for a man to tell you thank you. You want the ajr and you want the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I know, yarhamkumullah, I know it feels good. I know it feels good to, the Prophet ﷺ actually said, those that don't thank the people will not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's one thing. The part that we said is authority. And what else did we say? Respect and recognition.
Yes.
That recognition, definitely. And that's one thing I would say is that sometimes, whether ladies, letting the man know that you recognize the effort that they're trying to contribute within the household, it means a lot to them. But it's not a word that they look for. A man doesn't look for a word of thank you. That's you. That's what you look for. You look for a word. He looks for an action. So to him, an action where you cleaned the house, you've got a dish, a food, the food is prepared, you're not nagging and nagging and nagging. That's the way that he wants to hear the thank you. It's not an issue of putting a flower or dressing. It's not just that. It's, please save your talk. Don't nag. The most thing that I would appreciate is peace and quiet.
And food.
That's the most thing. Definitely, they want food. Definitely, they want food. A good food and a good meal is worth a lot, okay? Especially if it's Arabi man, right? Somali men too?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, Somali. Security, what's the most preferred food for a Somali man?
Baris.
What?
Baris, rice.
Baris?
Rice and banana.
Rice and bananas? Okay, okay. Okay. What about Mali men?
Yeah, there's rice as well.
Rice, okay.
It's jollof rice.
Jollof rice?
They
Okay,
eat jollof rice.
okay,
We eat, I can't say basmati because India is not with Palestine. So
okay,
rice that is not Indian.
Okay.
But just rice.
okay. Any idea what Palestinian foods sound like?
Palestinian food?
Mhm.
What
Well, my
about-
husband doesn't eat Palestinian food because he's Tunisian. But, Palestinian food, ladies, listen to this. The most famous Palestinian foods are number 1. Listen to this. Mansaf, maqlube. Mansaf means it's blown up. Maqlube means it's flipped over. Okay. Mtafaya means it's turned off from burning. Okay. What else can I name? what else can I name? Those are really fast names. Okay, Mansaf, Maqluba, Mutaffaya, those are really fast names. My husband, on a side, my husband is Tunisian, and he's always mocking Palestinian food. And he says, "Why do you always have political names even for your food? Blown up, flipped over, it's turned off from flames." He's like, have it peaceful. I'm here going for a dish, not for a war. I never thought about that till I married a Tunisian husband, It's
So
like,
what is
never
mansaf?
thought.
Is it everything?
Mansaf, well, mansaf is the most famous dish for Palestine, Jordan, and Syrians, they don't, it's not their favorite, but Jordanians definitely.
What is it?
Mansaf. So for Somalis, this is horrible, but for us, this is like gold.
Jannah?
Mansaf is really, it's really goat meat or
That's nice.
sheep meat. No, wait a minute. There's a secret to it. It's not just that. Rice and the broth. We would cook it, the broth, and then the broth, we would actually mix it with dried cheese. But لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Said لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. That means takfir right on the spot for a dish, takfir. That's exactly what my husband would say. My husband, just from the smell of it, was like, "La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah." Did you have to do this when I was here?
West Africa, they
For
put
a Somali,
fish.
that's it. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah.
West Africa, they put fish in everything. So I can't eat their food.
You can't
It
eat their
has
food?
Fish, like the meat has fish. It's very spicy.
You guys are really getting into the food, huh? Everybody's hungry here. إن الله كان عليما خبيرا. Lord Almighty is عليما خبيرا. وعليما خبيرا. All knowing. And Khabir is basically the one that knows the outcome of things before they even happen. Before they even happen.
I have
Why that? Well, the main reason for that is because, one, you don't really know the shiqaq and who really is right. Some things are ambiguous. Number two is that in situations of shiqaq, it's not always a black and white thing. Should be number two, but sometimes when you contribute, it's enough. Remember these three things: that respect and authority, and what was the and recognition. Those three things sometimes, what falls in between the lines, in between the lines is what many might not recognize, is that the fight wasn't about, and this happens a lot in where women don't say what they want in a straightforward way. So if, let's say, I guess she wanted to be recognized on that day, she wanted to be somehow remembered. So she will come to him, "What's today?" And he's thinking, Tuesday. And she's like, "No, what's today?" And I don't know, December 7th. And she's like, "No, there's something else. What is it?" And she'll cry and throw a tantrum, and he's confused. It was like, what just happened? It was like, it was our anniversary. And he doesn't even remember his social security number, let alone his anniversary. No, this is real. Doesn't even remember his own birthday. Even if it does happen to him, it doesn't even recognize it. And by the way, it happens a lot in court. Pay attention to this one. In court, many times, the women's lawyers, they will go and start asking the husband. They'll ask questions, things like, when is the child's birthday? And usually the man doesn't know. Who's his pediatrician? He usually doesn't know. Who's his primary? He usually doesn't know. What grade is he in? He doesn't know. But here's one thing. That does not mean he doesn't care. It doesn't mean he doesn't care. For you as a mother, you have certain relationship that's completely different than a man's relationship with the children. And that's why a lot of men actually lose their child custody because the way they are being interrogated in court. It is not fair. That is not necessarily meaning that the man is not doing his job and not caring for the children. It's not fair. The questions are not fair because the relationship is totally different. It didn't take that in consideration. Yes, she took him to the pediatrician, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't care about his health. Their recognition or their, let's say, care for details is totally different than the way you care for details. You go into a room and the first thing, you go into a house, the first thing a woman looks into is certain details, the curtains, the carpet, the kitchen, the cabinets. That's not what he's looking at. You know, I was actually putting my house up for rent. You won't believe how many people I did the showing to. So many men didn't even care to look at the house. And they would just sit in the living room and the woman would go around the house and she would say approved or not approved. The man didn't even care to look at the house. He was like, yeah, that's okay. At least I have a room and that's it. Most men didn't even care to look at the house. They more cared, ironically, they more cared to look at the furnace area than anywhere else. The heat and furnace, because they don't want that breaking down and then be responsible for it. They would go and look at the furnace. That's the most expensive place in the house, just to tell you. That furnace alone costs almost $20,000, right? And that's even worth more than what the kitchen is costing. The kitchen cabinets, you can install them for like 7,000, 8,000, 10,000. Depends on the contractor that you're getting. Look at that. He knows where the bucks are going. This is real. This is real. And here's one thing, is that it's important to recognize that the way we contribute in a family is totally different. There's no way that your contribution is going to be at all estimated to being not even near close. Not even near. No way his contribution is going to be even near to what you're contributing. There's no way. And that's why I'm saying, if you're looking at justice as your goal, you're taking it wrong. Husband and wife relationships, you can't consider that. Your contribution for sure is going to be a lot more. For sure, it's going to be a lot more. Who do I want the recognition from? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it. Just from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahi al-azim. That's all you wanted from. Once we recognize that recognition part, then you will see a lot. And if you look at these three things, the authority, the recognition, and the respect, once you see these things in place, when each and every single one of you, if he's actually giving you the respect, you're giving him the respect, each and every single one of us is holding themselves accountable in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you won't need to say more than have taqwa. That's all you would need. If he's not shaken by that, and if she's not shaken by have taqwa, wallahi, it's a word, uqsim billahi al-azim. It's a word, wallahi, it would shake mountains, let alone human beings. Unless, wallahi, the person, unless they're Ibn Haram. Uqsim billah. You guys laugh at this word. It seems like it means something else to you guys. I'm not sure what is going on. Something, something.
It's a good name.
It's a good, Allah yahdiki, ya Rabbi, it's a good name.
No, for disappointment.
All right. Wa'budullaha wa la, you know what? Let's look at
Aisha,
the.
I had a question at the ayat.
Yep.
When you say does he have to have knowledge or it's just anyone?
Does he have to?
Have Islamic knowledge, like the fact, Quran,
Fair. That's a very good question. When we want to appoint a deputy, Do they have to have Islamic knowledge? Certainly, they have to have some Islamic knowledge. They also have to, and it's important to mention, just by having Islamic knowledge does not qualify, make that person qualified to solve people's disputes. That's a totally different thing. Okay? Having the ilm is one side of it. You're looking at theory. It's exactly like when you're talking about engineering. The theory in math and calculus and all of that, that's one side. Good for you. But true engineering is hands-on. True engineering is hands-on, and that's the same thing. In where the theory is one side, but the true reconciliation process, or the true qualified person to help in solving people's problems, is really a person that had hands-on. How do we do the hands-on? It's really important that, number one, when we have our masajid, that we would force the imams to take certain classes, whether it's in psychology, or whether it's in marriage counseling, or whether it's in communication, or whether even psychiatry, or even classes on women's health, men's health, just different things. It's important. Make it mandatory to take these trainings. It's not enough. And even financing. Take certain classes on financing, banking even. The more the person is aware of these systems, the more they become qualified and capable of bringing in better communication, because this is extremely important. Communication, okay, good for you if you just have that skill from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there are certain trainings on how you learn how to communicate, because communication doesn't always involve how to speak. It also involves how to listen. And 80% of the problems, the husband and wife problems, is really in not listening, especially women. Sorry, I'm not being a misogynist, but we tend to talk and we basically don't give time for listening. We don't give the time to listen. And we end up thinking that we were not heard. We're unheard, and he's not listening to me, and he's just basically saying, I heard you, but you still didn't make a fair argument. So sometimes, and I always say this, sometimes if you feel that the communication is not going right between a husband and a wife, write it down. Write it down. Then let ChatGPT, okay, here we go. Then let ChatGPT edit the language to sound at least professional. Maybe we can, what's a nice ChatGPT? We would go to ChatGPT and say, please edit these words to show respect. Maybe we could do that, right? Ask ChatGPT to re-edit your words after you type in all the different things that you're angry about, and tell ChatGPT, please edit this showing respect. That'll be nice.
In a way that a man can understand.
In a word that a man can understand. I wonder if ChatGPT could do that. That'll be really interesting.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting. We would have, woman write all of her things. You did this. Why didn't you do this? And I told you to do this. Oh man. And then we would tell ChatGPT, reword it in a way that a man can understand. I'm afraid that the ChatGPT is going to ask us to reboot.
Yeah. Actually, if it will give you an answer, and if you don't like it, you say another one. So I say five
Another
times
one?
another one, and they have
Another one?
answers.
Okay.
Oh,
You think he's going to be able to figure it out, or do you think
does
the
that.
ChatGPT is just going to say reboot?
Oh, you have it now? I do that.
It's like turning into a keyboard warrior.
Oh, there you go. All right, let's continue. وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. How did I jump into this?
Ask the question. And then
Ask the question?
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. So was actually talking about then it went into وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا.
You just finished maslaha.
Well, yeah, right. How did I jump into this? Give me ideas.
In Allah. Oh, wait.
Think about it. So this ayah was basically telling us that if they were in a fight, and then it goes into and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it was telling you, and it wanted to remind us to remember that the one that we turn to in contribution, the whole relationship between you and your husband is a relationship that was supposed to be ibadah anyways. You weren't worshiping your husband, and he wasn't supposed to be worshiping you. And the authority, although yes, he is al-Qawam, but the real authority is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Huh?
Yes.
The real authority
It's Allah.
is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is okay, you are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you a certain responsibility to be al-Qawam, but that doesn't mean you act as God. It doesn't mean you act as God. What does it mean? Wa'budu. He didn't say wa'budi. He said wa'budu. And all of you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because al-ibadah. What is al-ibadah? Let me ask a question before I jump into ibadah. Wa'budu Allah wa la tushriku bihi shay'a. I'm going to translate the words really quick. And worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a wrong translation. So pay attention. And worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and don't associate any partners with him. And treat the parents kindly. And also the relatives, the orphans, the needy, the neighbors, the nearby neighbors, and the neighbors after them, and even the one next to the neighbors, and even those that have been stranded, and those that you possess, your right hand possesses, / the concubines. For the Lord Almighty dislikes those that walk in arrogance and pride. Can this ayah be mansukha? Yes or no? Why and why not? What is mansukh? Mansukh means abrogated.
No.
Why?
It's kind of
What's the opposite of mansukh? Muhkam.
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 It's 100%.
The opposite of mansukh, muhkam. What is mansukh? Mansukh, abrogated. What is abrogated? That means one ruling later was revealed that canceled out the previous ruling. Can this ayah be mansukha?
I don't think so.
no.
You don't think so?
Because I'll tell you why.
Mhm.
It's talking about the main theme of everything that we're learning constantly.
It's talking about the main theme.
Talking
Okay.
about
Good morals and
foundations.
the good morals.
Good morals, so they would never change.
They would never change.
Those never change.
my parents, that's non-negotiable.
This is muhkam. Why? Abrogation is only in rulings. It's never in aqidah. This is aqidah, you guys.
Okay, tell us we did a good job.
Oh yeah, you did a great job. There you go. $1 million. You can give it to her.
Inshallah, whenever I get it.
$1 million. Whenever you get it. وَعْبُدُوا وَلَا. This is muhkam. النسخ, abrogation only happens to rulings. And in order to have a naskh, you have to know the dates or the chronology of which one happened first and which one happened later. Oh? But this ayah is muhkam bil ijma'. Scholars agreed unanimously that this is a muhkama. It can never be abrogated because, like you said, these are the foundations of Islam. They would never be canceled out. They would never be changed. Those are the main things. Wa'budullah, and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is al-ibadah? Al-ibadah consists of 3 things. Number one is not associating partners in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the actual belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in God. In other words, you don't worship anything else. Number 2, you don't consider that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is his actions, that anybody shares his actions with him. What does that mean? No one else gives rizq along with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one else has the ilm as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one else gives life as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So any action, remember, the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are split into two. One, some of the names are names, nouns. They are to describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. And the other types of names, or they're more attributes. What does that mean, an attribute? An attribute describes his actions. So his name is not Ar-Razzaq as a name, but this is to describe him as given provision. Al-Khaliq, that's not his name. That's a description that he is the creator. The names and attributes are actually split into 6 different categories. The 6 different categories, some of the names are actually opposites.
Okay.
Al-Awwal, Al-Akhir. Is he the first or is the last?
Both.
He's both.
Okay, fast.
He's Al-Mu'izz, Al-Mudhil. Wait a minute. Is he the one that is Mu'izz, the one to give honor, or the one to dishonor?
Both.
He's both. Why? To show encompassment. To show encompassment. The names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 1, would show authority and dominionship. 2, to express forgiveness and repentance. 3, to express encompassment over everything. 4, to express power. To express al-Qahhar. To express power. 5, to express how he is the one to control everything. How he's the one to control everything. Now, when you look at these names and attributes associating anybody that they are included in the dominionship, in the power, in the force that he's putting in things, or even in an encompassment, etc. What's the ayah that would bring about the foundation of who is God? Ayat al-Kursi. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. Allahu la ilaha illa hu. There's only one God worthy of worship. When it comes to the word ilah, to mean a deity. Al-Hayy, Al-Qayyum. Al-Hayy, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is eternal. He is the only one to be eternal, forever, never dying. Al-Qayyum, he doesn't depend on anyone for his existence at all. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. Now we go into the force and energy. لا تأخذه, no weakness, not even the first stages of sleep takes over the Lord Almighty. Why? Because he does not lose power / does not lose energy / does not lose any of his encompassment. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. To not lose encompassment. That's why the ayah continues to affirm this idea. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ. Not only an encompassment in his existence, but also an encompassment in his ilm. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. Well, now that we go for the second type of ubudiyah. وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. If that's the throne itself, actually going beyond and encompassing the heavens and the earth. How is it with the Lord Almighty? He didn't even describe how big he is. He just said that's the throne. What about the Lord Almighty? The Lord Almighty is not encompassed by place or by time. وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض. In order to tell us what? من ذا الذي يشفع عنده. Here comes the other type of ibadah. Al-ibadah, in what you believe about the God himself. 2, in your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of the actions. that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one, you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your faith in Him, then also in your faith in how you recognize His power and actions. So التوحيد بالعبادة, in worship, and also the tawheed in what you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as an entity, and two, as His actions and how far they extend. And number three, in believing in the Lord Almighty as the only one, of course, as the only one to deserve al-ikhlas. Al-ikhlas, sincerity. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ taught us that when we're talking about riya, or doing something for the sake of people, that is another type of shirk. How is it shirk? You would actually consider that someone else deserves the recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now remember, when you look at, before earlier, we talked about the problems between husband and wife are usually between relating to authority, respect, and recognition. And وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. The Lord Almighty has the highest example. The Lord Almighty, you give Him the authority, you give Him the recognition in al-ibadah, and you give the Lord Almighty a dhikr, the remembrance. لله المثل الأعلى. When we were talking about the husband and wife, we said that's what really is the motive behind all the problems. These three things are also the motive behind shirk. If you give authority to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's shirk. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was taking us right there and to tell us wa'budullah, that the real authority is to Allah, that the real respect and the highest principle that you would worship and that you would recognize is really Allah, and the highest recognition is really Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see it right there. So therefore, for the many women and even men that would, if the men would think that, oh, the woman is supposed to be somehow taking him as a god, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling him right after this ayah, no, you're going to turn to Allah. And for the man, He's telling him, no, you're going to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for the woman, son, you're going to have to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want authority, recognition, and respect? You go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to define it for you. To define it for you. So the center is not the man and certainly not the woman. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, the opposite of ibadatillah, what is that? Shirk. If you're not worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what are you committing? You're committing shirk. وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Now, very important thing to say. When you look at La ilaha illallah, it carries two things within it. Number one, denying something, and two, affirming something. La ilah, no God, but Allah. Even though that's not an accurate translation, because it's not no God but God, it's no God worthy of worship. So that's why the ayah was really doing the same thing. Wa'budullah, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa la tushriku, and do not associate any partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is shirk? It's the opposite of al-ibadah. Shirk, whether you're having authority other than Allah, whether you're recognizing the effort or any energy or any power around you to being by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and by someone else, that's shirk. Or to giving al-ibadah, respect and honor to other than Allah, that's shirk. Got it? These three things. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. So how do I deal with the parents? Should I also put them at the pedestal to the point that I would be worshiping them? No. So then he says, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ. What is al-walid? Al-walid is one. Al-walid is supposed to be the one that bore. Huh? The one that bore. But al-walidain was more of a metaphor, even though the husband or the man doesn't bear the children to mean he doesn't get pregnant and all of that. But still, in Arabic, both are actually considered as al-walidain, as if they were both responsible for making the child. So they're considered as al-walidain. How do I deal with the walidain? Ihsana. Ihsan. What is al-ihsan? Is it just to be good? No. What is al-ihsan? Is it justice? Which is better, justice or ihsan? Ihsan. So what does that mean? What if my mother or my father were abusive? Fair is fair. They were abusive to me. Time for me to retaliate. Do that? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, no. Even if they did not act in justice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not asking you to be just with your parents. No, He's actually asking you to be at the level of ihsan, not justice. To be at the level of justice is abuse in Islam. What? Islam is asking you to go beyond justice, to actually be just and fair, be just in Islam. In certain situations is abuse in Islam. How is that even making sense? It's making sense because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking you, number one, remember the authority?
Yes.
Put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the authority to define justice for you. Number one. Number two, He asked you, even if your parent transgressed the limit, you don't have the right to punish your parent for the transgression that they had committed. Who's the one that has the right to tell you, I'll deal with it? That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tells you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deal with their transgression, not you. Why not? Why can't I do it? He'll tell you, I'll give you your haqq. But right now in dunya, there are certain things that happened in history that you yourself do not have data about. You don't even have the data about your parents and what they contributed to make you who you are. So therefore, you can't be the judge. It's not fair for you to be the judge. Why not? Because you don't even know what they contributed. They didn't contribute anything. I know that. How do you know when you don't even have the data? You didn't even have any memory at the time. Your brain wasn't even developed. How is it that you know? No, you don't know, because that information is not within your scope anyways. Therefore, if that information was not within your scope, therefore that makes you not qualified to judge your parent. You can't judge your parent. So what should I do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, listen, because justice is not attainable in this situation because you lack data, all I could tell you is go for the level of ihsan, not justice. You're not qualified to do the justice piece of it. So for ihsan, go for, what is ihsan? Ihsan is to give even when you cannot have anything as a payback, or even some form of equity. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, bil walidain ihsan, that's a different level. What's the evidence? What's the evidence that ihsan is a different level? Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan. Ya'mur bil adli wal ihsan. This wow right here, wal ihsan, actually means al-mughayara. That means this is different. If I were to say, I have apples and bananas, that means apples are different than bananas. The and means apples are different than bananas. But if I were to say, I have an apple and an apple, You could just say two apples. But when you say adl and ihsan, that means there's two different things. Huh? Two different things. وبالوالدين إحسانا وبذي القربى. So الوالدين إحسانا. So what should I do for الوالدين? What should I do for الوالدين?
Everything halal and voluntary.
Everything halal and voluntary. So
Nawafils and the halal.
hold on. So what should I do for my mom and dad?
Dua, cook for them.
Dua, cook for them,
Don't
listen to
answer
them,
back to them.
don't answer back.
Be obedient in what Allah loves and halal.
Okay. What if they're asking me for something that's not within their scope?
Authority of the
Authority of
scope
Allah
or
subhanahu
the scope or the-
Hold on, let's do this. So in general, number one is that al-ihsan would actually include in each and every single corner. Number one, al-ihsan, even in the way, let's go for the D-N-A-I-M, in deen. How do you do ihsan in their deen? Remind them for khair. Oh,
Be a good Muslim.
be a good Muslim. Let's go for the nafs. If they need taking care of, hospital appointment, taking care of them, massaging their feet if that's what they need. All right. Maybe helping them with their probably laundry if that's what they need, being at their service basically, if that's what's needed at that time. The aql, contributing and giving them. المن أبكى والديه فقد عرقهما. If you made your parents cry because as a result of you, that means you had made uquq. If your parents are crying as a result of you, you had committed uquq. Let alone, I've actually had parents, and this is real, lose bowel because of their children. This is real. The anxiety was so much that their body couldn't handle it, or even have strokes because of the anxiety, or even start shaking, neurological problems because of all the anxiety. This is uquq.
What is the uquq?
Uquq is disrespecting parents. It's the opposite of al-ihsan for al-walidain.
Is it like uquba?
Uquq, no. Al-uquq is to disrespect the parent. Al-uquba is a punishment, but al-uquq al-walidain is the opposite of al-ihsan lil-walidain. So if you're causing an anxiety to your parents, that's uquq.
If I need to sell voluntary?
I'll get to it. Number 4, chastity and respecting the family, being there, siblings, etc. Giving that. Number 5, of course, and even giving. Number 4, let me stay with the number 4, respecting even the parents and the parents' privacy. At certain moments, just respect that they have a certain zone. Leave them alone. Stay away. Giving them their certain zone, certain times. They just like a peace and quiet. They just don't want anybody intruding. Number 5, money. If they're in need for money, you would give them money. But what about أنت وما لك لأبيك? You and your money belongs to your father. That is when he is in need. It doesn't mean that he can somehow abuse you and take all your money and say, I want you to, whenever you're working, you would basically put my banking routing number and account number. The money would come to me and I'll give you the amount that you need. Oh, believe it or not, some people do that. I know you guys are laughing about it, but some people actually do that. Okay. How do we do that? Of course, I'm not talking about a 16 or 17-year-old. Should a 17-year-old actually have their money go to their parents? Depends. Depends if it's Fatima or someone else. What should we do? Number one, remember the ayah in the beginning of Surah Nisa. فإن آنستم منهم رشدا فدفعوا إليهم أموالهم. Oh, what does that mean? If you sense maturity, then give them their money back. That was talking about who? I was talking about the orphans, but that doesn't just talk about the orphans. This is also talking about anybody, even if they reach the age of puberty. We don't just give them their money unless they are mature enough, having rushd, to understand how to use that money. But it's their money. Yes, if they don't have the rushd to use it, we would help them do money management. We need a mature person to help them learn how to do money management. So do I take the money as a parent? You don't take the money. You keep it for them. But should I charge them for staying and for house and rent and all of that? Should we charge them? Once the child reaches the age of puberty, at least the boy, Islamically, he is responsible for himself financially. Therefore, the boy, if the boy is working, he should be the one responsible to even contribute in paying utilities, paying rent, and paying even for his school tuition and so forth. Does the girl do the same? The girl is not obligated to work, but if she does work, then it is fair that she would contribute within the household if she's working. Right? So it doesn't mean that I'm steering all the money that I make is for me and you don't have the right to take anything. No, you're living within the household and you're working. Fair enough. Fair enough. You would contribute. Then you've got the money. If you have the money, then it would be fair to deduct the expenses that are making you live. Not, oh, my money, I'm going to go buy a Gucci bag with it. So you go buying Gucci bags, but you don't have the money to participate in paying utilities and paying rent. And who's going to pay your car insurance? Are we going to pay your car insurance? No, you're going to pay your car insurance. And you're going to pay for the other expenses. Or what about your clothes? Are you going to pay for your clothes? Or am I going to pay for your clothes? If you're working, pay for your own clothes. Fair? وبذي القربى. بذي القربى, who are القربى? قربى are relatives. Who is a relative? They're المحارم. They're number one, المحارم. So you've got different stages. The first orbit, the first center is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay.
Orbit number one,
Allah.
الوالدين. That's the, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the nucleus.
Nucleus.
Okay?
Yes.
You guys studied
Okay, we're with you.
chemistry, right?
Yeah.
Got the nucleus. You got the first orbit.
Yes.
You got the second orbit.
Allah.
Okay, nucleus is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay.
The first orbit, الوالدين. Second orbit, قربة. القربة can be husband, can be the siblings, the children. Those are قربة. They're all قربة. Anybody that is قريب to mean that you share biological relations with them. You share blood. You share blood with them. Oh, and of course, the farther the person, of course, a second cousin is not like a fifth cousin.
For a woman, doesn't the husband come before the mother?
The husband comes before the mother. If she's married, yes, the husband does come before the mother if she's married. Okay? But this is laying out the foundations. Okay? وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى. Who's الْقُرْبَى? So how do we relate with الْقُرْبَى? With the relatives. And they're the most ones to transgress the limits, trust me. Exactly. Assalamu alaikum on Eid Day. They're the most ones to transgress the limit. How do we deal with them?
Check up on that.
إيتاء ذي القربى. إيتاء. What is الإيتاء? الإيتاء is when we remember when we say إيتاء الزكاة.
Yeah.
What is إيتاء الزكاة? You give.
When they need help.
Huh? You give. إيتاء الزكاة is to give without waiting for something in return. You don't give the zakat to a poor person and say, come back to me on Tuesday. You guys know who was saying you come back to me on that he's gonna pay on it was on Tuesday. You guys know Popeye? You don't know Popeye?
Muslim or not?
Popeye, the cartoon.
Oh,
The cartoon, long time ago.
we were not
There's
born
that guy
in
that was always eating the hamburgers, and he was always getting paid. And whenever they would ask him when he's supposed to be paying back, it was supposed to be on Tuesday.
Oh. I was going after guess sorry.
You were sorry
I
about
mean,
that.
I
I used to
remember
watch
and then I let me
Caillou.
watch it.
Oh, you used to wait Caillou? Oh, that one. I'm older than Caillou. Okay, I'm older than Caillou. Caillou was later.
We used to be stronger by eating those things.
The spinach.
Oh yes, spinach. yes.
Yep, there you go.
That's
My
one,
grandma
yeah.
used to say, is Caillou ever gonna pass the age of 4?
There, exactly. With القربة. So how do we deal with القربة? القربة إيتاء ذي القربة. Remember in Allah يأمر what is the ayah? يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربة. إيتاء ذي القربة, in where the least, the highest, is to give without waiting for something in return. But they cannot take advantage. So what should I do? وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي. ينهى عن الفحشاء. What is الفحشاء? الفحشاء is usually oral transgression. Oral transgression. Using bad words. Profanity. The Prophet ﷺ actually said, ليس المؤمن بالطعان ولا اللعان ولا الفاحش ولا البذيء. That a believer is not طعان. Doesn't curse. ولا اللعان. And is not a person that's damning things. ولا الفاحش. Who's الفاحش? The person that describes things that are supposed to be private things. They're describing it in their own word. Instead of saying going to the bathroom, might actually use clear or different words. And there are some people that have no respect. You know, that they would really use words. I absolutely hate, and I really hate hearing words of profanity. I cannot handle it. I cannot handle at all people using things like blank word, or you guys understand what I'm saying, what I'm talking about. It's extremely disgusting. Subhanallah, when the Prophet ﷺ said ليس المؤمن بالطاعان ولا اللعان ولا الفحش ولا البذيء, wallahi, there's no way that you're gonna get to Jannah if your words, every time you are angry at something, you're using this word and that word, and you're just cussing everything around you. That's one thing you are capable of telling a mu'min from a munafiq. A mu'min doesn't do that. He didn't say not a Muslim doesn't do that. He said a mu'min doesn't do that. It is absolutely not befit for a mu'min to describe things that are supposed to be in the bathroom to actually use it because you're angry at the door not opening, or you not, I don't know, something standing in your way, and using these kind of words. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described. The people that go to Jannah are those that would, how would their words be? عباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما. For al-mu'mineen, the ones to actually be in the Jannah are the ones. That's why even in Jannah, all you hear is salam. Peaceful words. Such kind of words are not peaceful. Here's what I'll do. I'll stop with dhil qurba, okay? Because that's a lot to describe, and that's a lot of information.
Explain badi.
Badi, al-badi is a person that uses words that are too graphic and too explanatory for things that are supposed to be hidden. Instead of talking about, for example, feces, using words that are more explicit than that. Instead of talking about urine, using different words. instead of talking about maybe the bathroom, you guys understand now. It's self-explanatory. I don't need to go in more details because that's going to be profanity itself. So we'll see you inshallah next week. I can see other people are like, okay, when's the class going to end? Inshallah, hopefully next week will be, what was that?
Friday.
Oh, Friday.
Oh,
Friday,
I'm like, oh my
Friday.
gosh, said Aysha, like, this is our happy place.
Oh, Friday, inshallah. Friday, inshallah.
Last week,
Back to topic. Yeah, now I remember back to topic. What was that? Yeah, inshallah, Friday. We're going to continue this, inshallah, on Friday. I was really hoping to finish 2 pages, but inshallah, we'll continue on Friday. And
Aysha, once you leave, are you going to be teaching the Tafsir online?
yeah, inshallah. I can't quit. I don't know how to quit. This is just part of me. Believe it or not, I would be talking to myself literally and imagining that I'm in class. That's even when I was a little girl, that's how I would always picture myself. I would always picture myself that I'm living and giving a tafsir or giving fiqh and teaching and going, and what would I say? How would I want to explain this? What would the idea be in it? Even when I was a little kid. So Ameen Ya Rabbi. And inshallah, we'll continue. I don't know how to do anything else. I just enjoy this. Alia, oh, Alia, she's awesome. I'm older than Alia. Can't you see that I'm bullying? I'm always bullying people and bossing people around. Oh, yeah.
for Allah.
Alhamdulillah. No, I'm just joking. I'm not bossing people around. Okay. Bullying people, do I? No, not always. Sometimes. Okay.
You don't look like a bully at all.
All right. Yeah. Well, yeah, they're wrongfully describing me as the bullying older sister. Yeah, they're wrong. They're wrong.
Yeah,
They're
wrong.
They're wrong. They're definitely wrong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We'll end right here,
We
everybody.
never got to the Hatima Hajj article. I mean, I was looking
Oh
for
man,
it.
you should have reminded me. I totally
I
forgot.
mean, you were in the element. I didn't
Oh
want to
man.
stop it.
Well, inshallah, remind me.